I want to share some words and practices about a time that I call reintegration. This is the time immediately following any major life event, whether it's something that's really wonderful or whether it's something that's terrible, a big change. And sometimes it can even be little changes that just have a big impact on our system. And what we can do to integrate that energy. And this is why I call it the time of reintegration. So when there's a shift, either from a trauma or something really wonderful, and a change, the reintegration time is the time when we are integrating our body and our experience back into like our normal life, or kind of into the life that kind of like is more like the life that existed before the change happened. A lot of times when we're experiencing change, things are very different. We don't have a normal routine. We're not able to do some of the same things that we would be doing if we weren't experiencing change. And so then the reintegration time is the time that's needed for our bodies to reacclimate back into what might be a normal routine for us. The word normal is problematic for me generally. In this case, I can't think of a better word. I don't feel terribly offended using the word normal, but I hope that nobody who's watching is feeling triggered. And if you are, you can comment on this video and put a different word there. Regular life, maybe. So the reintegration time, what I have noticed is that a lot of times when I'm reintegrating from a change, or something that's really wonderful or something that's really hard, the day after is always a really tough day for me and for my kids. So I'm going to give some examples of things that I am using these reintegration practices for. If my kids have been away from me for a couple days and then they come back to me, the day after they come back, we will have a reintegration time. If I experience a really strong trauma trigger, the day after that trauma trigger, I will have reserved for reintegration time. If somebody that I love comes to visit me and we spend time together, the day after they leave, I'll reserve that time for reintegration time. Moving, reintegration may take days. What I've been noticing is that when I have really significant trauma triggers or significant changes, the reintegration time takes longer. So I'm going to share some of the practices that I've been working on for this time. The first practice always for me for anything is awareness. How can I cultivate more awareness around what's going on in my body? What's going on in my environment? What's going on in the bodies and minds of people around me? The goal for the reintegration time is to really get reoriented into the home environment or into the family environment or into the the kind of the places where both of those things come together. So it feels like it's a time of grounding. So using kind of any grounding practices that you have to help to ground back into the body and into the home. For me, this is a little bit of an aside, but for me, I'm starting to really see my home as a living entity, and to understand that I have a relationship with the home, and I am starting to work on developing relationships with the spirits who guard the home, the spirits of the hearth in particular. I've been working on developing relationships with the spirits of the plot of land that the house sits on for a few years, but this really seeing the home as a living entity is new for me. So other practices for reintegration, the main practice, other than awareness, is allowing. And what this specifically looks like for me is really taking everything off of my to-do list and just allowing whatever gets done to be done, and to not have specific goals for my reintegration time. And this has completely changed the energy of my life and my family in this reintegration time, taking it from being stressful to being present. As much as possible, taking everything off of the to-do list except for feeding, drinking water, taking medicine, and then co-regulation is also a really important piece. So I try to get as much physical contact with my kids as possible, to really help them to know that I'm here for them, and to really help them to ground into my body, which is grounding into the house. And I try to be more generous with the ways that I'm supporting them. Generally, I'm more of a hands-off parent, but during this time, I really try to be a hands-on parent, because I've seen that the more that I tend to each relationship in the house, the more that I tend to each body, and the more that I let go of things outside of the home, things that are not necessary to live in a specific time frame, usually a day, the more successful this reintegration is, and the less stressful it is for everybody. So I'm really focusing on staying present in my body throughout the day, noticing when stress is starting to arise, and then figuring out how to address that. Really encouraging the kids to be drinking more water, and myself to be drinking more water and tea, using more tinctures throughout the day than I would in a normal day, which is usually I'm just taking tinctures once a day. Trying to spend as much time outside as possible. So a lot of these other techniques or practices are things that are just kind of general things for wellness and trauma recovery. But the major two pieces, as I've already said, are really trying to stay aware and in tune with my body, and taking everything off the to-do list other than what's needed to survive in a day. I think what I've noticed is that the more that I do this, the more that I'm able to open to cultivating joy. So integrating play in more than is normal in a day. It just happens because I'm focused more on tending my body and other bodies. And I think that this practice of reintegration, just by practicing it, which means letting go of perfectionism and just trying, this has allowed me to have moments of reintegration after traumatic events or traumatic experiences, small t traumatic, just where my body is flooded with stress hormones. And I know that that these practices are related. So figuring out how to reintegrate from bigger changes and bigger traumas has helped me to manage the small traumas, which are often related to big traumas, because if they're not tended, then they tend to pile up. So hoping that you all can find these tools useful, and if you do find these tools useful, I'm asking for support for this work that I'm continuing to offer. There's many ways of support, from offering me gifts to supporting me financially, to being willing to work with me to do some somatic practices and trials, to supporting me with parts of my business that are needing support. Again, that would be offering gifts. No gift is too small, and every gift is appreciated. So hoping that you can find this useful, especially in this really intense time that we're in right now.